First of all, I want to introduce the definitions related to policy monitoring and evaluation. When it comes to the word monitoring, we usually think it means observing and tracking the progress or quality of something over a period of time. When it's about policy, policy monitoring is a continuous process. We collect, record, and analyze data systematically to assess the progress and implementation of the policy during the implementation process. Evaluation usually means making a judgment about the quantity, number, or value of something. In the evaluation of policies, it's usually a systematic analysis process to measure whether the policy has reached the expected goals and to check the effect and the influence of the policy. However, for the policies in the education system, monitoring and evaluation have different definitions. In the education system, policy monitoring means collecting and analyzing data systematically and continuously to track the whole process from the formulation to the implementation of educational policies, to ensure their effective implementation and to provide real-time information for decision makers and assess whether they have reached to the expected goals. And evaluation means systematically analyzing the design, implementation, and results stage of educational policies to assess how effective, efficient, and influential they are. Okay, after talking about the definition of policy monitoring and evaluation in the education system, now let's focus on the specific types of policy evaluation in the education system. By the way, educational policy evaluation involves a thorough analysis of the policy from its implementation process to the impact of the results. It includes things like the efficiency of using resources, whether the policy goals are achieved, and the contribution to educational equity and the improvement of quality. So in educational policy evaluation, there are mainly four types. The first one is process evaluation and outcome evaluation, impact evaluation, and economic evaluation. First, let's look at the first type, process evaluation. This type of evaluation pays more attention to the way, steps, and progress of policy implementation. It checks if it's carried out as planned. For instance, when confirming if the transformational leadership of the principal has a positive effect on teachers' performance. The goal of the evaluation is to see if the principal training program was carried out as planned. Then the evaluation result is confirmed by whether the training was done according to the normal procedures or if the training rate reached the standard. Next, let's look at the second type, outcome evaluation. Compared to process evaluation, this type focuses on the direct results of the policy and checks if the policy goals are reached. For example, when evaluating if a policy carried out by a school is good, we can monitor its student enrollment rate, graduation rate, and exam scores to see if a policy to improve educational quality works. Besides focusing on the process and results, checking if a policy has an impact is also a type of assessment. This type pays more attention to the long-term effects of the policy on the education system and the society. For example, evaluating if the policy of universal compulsory education has raised the overall educational level and the labor productivity of society. And finally, the influence of the economy on the policy is obvious. So economic assessment is also important for educational policy. It mainly emphasizes evaluating the cost-effectiveness ratio of the educational policy and analyzing if the resource input brings a reasonable return. For example, doing a cost-effectiveness analysis on the educational priority elevation policy to see if the input of the educational funds has significantly reduced the dropout rate. To explain the four steps of policy monitoring in the education system in detail, I will put an example here. At first, let's assume an educational policy called Rural Area Education Equity Enhancement Program. At first, the goal of policy is to improve the shortage of educational resources in rural areas and make sure that rural students can enjoy education of the same quality as urban students. The measures of policy is that include increasing the number of teachers, improving teaching facilities, carrying out teacher training programs, and raising the enrollment and retention rates of students through tuition reduction policies. First, let's look at the first part, input. In this part, we need to think about three factors: budget, teacher resources, and infrastructure. In the budget, we need to think about have the government given special funds to support the development of rural education, and is the giving timely. In the teaching resources part, we need to think about have enough quality teachers being recruited or rural schools. Have any additional incentives like allowance being provided to attract teachers to work in rural areas. In the infrastructure part, we need to think about have the teaching facilities of the schools, such as classrooms, libraries, and the learning conditions of students, such as desks and chairs, being improved. After we are done discussing the monitoring factors, we still need to plan the specific actions. The specific monitoring actions are check the fund allocation, collect data, and field inspection. In the check the fund allocation, we need to focus on has the budget been given to the target schools on time, and is the fund used for the specific purpose. In the collect data, we need to focus on the number of new teachers added in each school, the proportion of teachers with teaching qualifications, and the distribution. For field inspection, we need to focus on the monitor the progress of the facility contribution in each target school, like the completion rate of newly built or renovated classrooms. After that, we can give a monitoring report. For example, the government has put in 500 million ringgit of special funds to improve educational resources in 20 target countries. And each country has added 50 new teachers, and 80% of the teachers have degrees related to education. And last one, 60% of schools have finished the infrastructure upgrade. And the remaining projects are expected to be completed within 3 months. After we talked about the input part, let's now have a look at the second part of monitoring this policy, the process. Since this policy is to improve rural teaching, so in this part we should pay attention to three aspects: teachers, courses, and students. For the teachers, we should focus on the teacher training program, such as have the pre-saving training being provided for the newly teachers, and does the training content include modern teaching methods, rural teaching challenges, and so on. And what's the participation rate of the training? And last one, is there an assessment plan for teachers? For the courses, we should focus on the progress of the curriculum reform. Like, has the new curriculum been carried out in the target schools? And have the teachers received guidance related to the new curriculum? And for the students, we should focus on their enrollment situation. For example, we need to know has the enrollment rate of students for the new semester gone up, or has the dropout rate is gone down. After we finished made our goals clear the same as before. We have also made some specific action plans for these three monitoring aspects. First of all, we need to collect the number of people who participated in the training program, the coverage rate of the training, and the satisfaction of the teachers with the training content. Secondly, we will have regular interviews with the teachers who took part in the training to know their understanding and use of the new curriculum, and the difficulties they meet during the implementation process. Finally, we will analyze the change in the enrollment rate at the beginning of the semester and the dropout rate in the middle of the semester to confirm if the policy has effectively increased the retention rate of the students. Then we make the monitoring report for this step. For instance, the number one, the participation rate of the teacher training reached 95%, and 90% of the participants were satisfied with the training content. Number two, 75% of the courses in the target schools have been implemented according to the new reform plan, but some schools said they lacked teaching material support. And the last one, the enrollment rate has increased by 10% and the dropout rate has decreased by 5%. After the checks of the input and process parts in the early stages, let's come to the third part, output and outcomes. When we talk about output and outcomes, we usually pay attention to its short-term and middle-term results. As for the implementation of a policy to improve teaching in rural schools, from the perspective of short-term results, at first we need to focus on has it made students' academic performance better, like better test scores, and has it improved teachers' teaching quality and their ability to manage the classroom. And from the perspective of medium-term results, first we focus on have the enrollment rate and retention rate of the school is gone up or down up. Secondly, we need to focus on have the satisfaction of parents and students with the equity of education is increased or decreased. Finally, we focus on has the educational equity improved a lot or don't have any change. For example, has the gap between urban and rural students gotten smaller. We have also designed some action plans for how to monitor the outcomes, getting views from teachers, students, and parents respectively. First, we will assess teachers' performance in the classroom to see if the teaching methods have changed for the better. Second, we will give students tests at a different stage to analyze the differences in academic performance before and after the policy was carried out. Finally, we will use satisfaction questionnaire from parents and students to evaluate the perceived improvement in the educational environment. After the monitor is done, we will still make a monitoring report based on the results. The results will be stated from three aspects: test scores, certification, and enrollment rates. For the test scores, the average math score of students in rural schools has gone up from 60 to 68. For certification, 80% of parents think the educational environment has improved a lot compared to before the policy was implemented. For the enrollment rates, they have increased from 85% to 92%, and the graduation rate has gone up from 65% to 75%. After finishing the step of output and outcomes, the effectiveness of the policy can basically be figured out. But for monitoring, there are still a more important step, and that is feedback and adjustment. Feedback is based on the monitoring data to find out the problems in the implementation, like the uneven distribution of educational resources or the deviations in policy execution, and then come up with the suggestions for adjustment to reach the goal of making the policy better. Now let's suppose this educational policy has these problems under monitoring. At first, there's an uneven distribution of teachers. Specifically, schools in remote areas still don't have enough high-quality teachers. Secondly, the progress of facility construction is slow. Specifically, the infrastructure upgrade of some schools hasn't been finished on time, which affects the normal teaching activities. Finally, there's a shortage of teaching materials. Specifically, some schools have said that there's a lack of textbook support for the curriculum reform. Then, after getting these feedbacks, the policymakers can readjust the policy and give specific solutions based on these three specific problems. At first, to deal with the problem of still lacking high-quality teachers, the government can increase the incentives for teachers in remote areas appropriately, like raising the allowance and providing housing support. Secondly, for the problem of slow progress in facilities, the local government can be pushed and to speed up the infrastructure construction and make sure the construction quality at the same time. Finally, considering the shortage of learning materials, the government can provide teaching resources that match the curriculum reform and add more practical parts to the teacher training. At the same time, to make sure if the direction of policy adjustment is right. In the following inspections, we should pay attention to the following three aspects. Number one, give priority to the resource distribution of remote school in the next stage of funding, and set up a special supervision team to keep an eye on the progress and quality of facility contribution. The last one is make a plan for the distribution of curriculum resources to make sure the teaching materials are given to each target school as needed. So the above is the whole process of policy monitoring. Through the four steps of input, process, output, and outcome, feedback, and adjustment, we can fully assess the implementation of the plan for enhancing education equity in rural areas. This way, we can find out the problems in the policy execution in time and come up with some suggestions for improvement to make sure the resources are used effectively and the policy goals are achieved. After the previous discussion about policy monitoring and evaluation, we can come to the conclusion that policy monitoring and evaluation are very important. And this is mainly shown in the following aspects. For monitoring, first, it's necessary to guarantee educational equity and quality. So monitoring data, we can assess how well the policies are doing in promoting educational equity and improving education quality, making sure that disadvantaged groups can have equal access to education. Second, it supports improvements in decision making. Monitoring gives a basis for adjusting educational policies. For example, through data analysis, we can tell if the resource input matches the educational development goals. Also, it can increase accountability and transparency. Regular monitoring and reporting on how education policies are being carried out can let the public and the relevant stakeholders know about the policy progress and increase trust in the education system. Finally, it can deal with the dynamic change. The educational environment is constantly changing, like students' needs, technological development, and social expectations. So monitoring, we can adjust policies in time to fit the new environment. For evaluation, at first, it makes sure policies are scientific and effective. Through evaluation, we can check if the design of educational policies is reasonable and if they are being implemented effectively. avoiding the waste of resources and the continuation of inefficiency policies. And second, it can support decision-making based on evidence. Evaluation provides reliable data support for the design of future educational policies, helping to make more targeted and feasible policies. In addition, it can improve educational equity and quality. Evaluation can show the influence of policies on different groups, such as urban and rural students, disadvantaged groups, helping to adjust policies to promote the improvement of educational equity and quality. Finally, it will enhance policy accountability. The result of policy evaluation gives the public and the stakeholders transparent information, making the education department accountable for the effectiveness of the policies. By the way, psychology is very important in policy evaluation because when we design and implement policies, we are often trying to change how people behave, what they think, and how they interact with each other. Psychology helps us understand these changes and why they happen. Here are three key theories that help explain psychological concepts. Theory of planned behavior, social cognitive theory, and decision-making theories. And my partner will give you a detailed introduction to them later.
Hello everyone, I'm Shirley. Now I'm going to present about application of psychological theories. For my part, here are three theories. The first one is theory of planned behavior. Second one is social cognitive theory. The last one is decision-making theories. Now I will focus on the first theory is theory of planned behavior. We can call it TPB. The TPB was proposed by Agent, who believed that the occurrence of behavior is influenced by the following four key factors. The first is behavior intention. An individual's motivation to perform a certain behavior, which is direct premise of the behavior. The second one is attitude. An individual's subjective evaluation of the certain behavior, whether it's positive or negative. The next one is subjective norms. An individual's perceived behavior expectations from society or important others. The last one is perceived behavioral control, an individual's subjective judgment of the ability or resources to complete the behavior. Okay, here is application of TPB in education. TPB can be used to predict and influence the attitudes and reactions of students, teachers, and parents to educational policies and behaviors. Here are two examples. The first one is students' learning behavior. It can predict students' intentions and behaviors in homework completions, and course participation, and so on, and can evaluate their learning attitudes and whether they are influenced by their peers. The second example is education policy promotion. It can evaluate parents' acceptance of new policies such as online education or off-campus training supervision, and can analyze their support or opposition attitudes. Okay, now I will focus on the second theory. Is social cognitive theories. We can call it SCT. The SCT is proposed by Bandura, and SCT emphasizes the interaction between individual behavior, social environment, and cognition. Here are three key concepts included. The first one is observational learning. It means learning how to act by observing the behaviors of others and their consequences. The second one is self-efficacy, and it means an individual's confidence in his or her ability to complete a behavior. The last one is reinforcement mechanisms. It means behavior is influenced by external rewards, punishments, or internal motivations. Okay, here is application of SCT in education. SCT emphasizes the impact of social environment on individual learning and behavior, and is particularly applicable to the following areas. As you can see, here are three areas. The first one is teacher-teaching behavior. It improves teaching effectiveness by observing the teaching methods and classroom management of excellent teachers. The second one is student learning. It encourages students to observe role models, such as the classmate with excellent grades, and cultivate learning motivation. The last one is policy evaluation. It means analyze whether educational policies enhance the self-efficacy of teachers and students and optimize the supportive environment. Okay, I will move on. The last series is decision-making series. For this series, I will focus on the one of include this series is a rational choice series. For the rational choice series, hopes that people evaluate the cost and benefits of choice when making decisions and tend to choose the option that brings the greatest net benefit. Uh, well, here also have some application in education. There are 2 points. The first one is incentive policy. It's design economic incentives, such as a scholarship or a student loans, to encourage students to continue their studies. The second one is allocation of educational resources. It evaluates the cost effectiveness of policies to optimize resource inputs, such as campus expansion or teacher training. For this series, I will share a case, like an example. As the school, for example, the school implemented a free lunch policy and evaluated the economic and social benefits of the policy by analyzing the relationship between improved students' nutrition and improved their learning performance. Okay, that's all my part. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Zoe. In my part, I will share some tools and methods for policy monitoring and evaluation. When we talk about the method, just like the methodology we used in our dissertation, it also has 2 types. One is the qualitative, the other is the quantitative method. And for the qualitative method, it includes interviews, focus groups, discussions, case studies, and observation. And for the quantitative method, it includes surveys and questionnaires, data analysis, experimental research, and also the performance indicator monitoring. And when we choose or apply the method, we also need to follow the SMART principle. The SMART principle is a critical framework for setting and evaluating goals, emphasizing the following characteristic. The first one is specific. Goals should be clear and precise, avoiding ambiguity. And next is measurable. Goals must include quantifiable criteria to track process and also the success. And next is achievable. Goals should be realistic and feasible, considering available resources and constraints. And that means the relevant. Goals should align directly with the broader objectives and also have the meaningful relevance to the overreaching policy. And the last one is the time bound. Goals must have a clearly defined time frame for completion. We can apply the SMART principle in 4 aspects as following. The first one is setting evaluation goals. The second is designing an indicator system. The third is the monitoring process, and the last is evaluating outcomes. I want to explain the last one. For the evaluating outcomes, you can assess the policy effectiveness based on the qualitative data and the milestones. Okay, let's move. The next part is the tools in different countries. I choose 3 countries: the United States and the United Kingdom, and also the South Africa. So the first one is the GPR used in United States, and what is the GRPA? It means the Government Performance and Resource Act. Maybe specifically, it requires all the federal agencies to manage activities with attention to outcomes. So, also I give an example. Maybe a case happened in America. This case is the objective is review the readiness and emergency management for school. So the GPR1 is the percentage of the REM's grant that demonstrate they have increased the number of the hazard addressed by the improved school emergency management plan as compared to the baseline plan. And the GPR2 is the percentage of the REM's granted size that demonstrate improved knowledge, policies, and procedures by school staff with the responsibility for emergency management functions. And the GPRA3 is the percentage of REM's grant size that have applied for and commitment to the sustainability and continuous improvement of the district and the community partners beyond the period of the federal financial assistance. The next one is the RBA, results-based accountabilities used in the United Kingdom. And I give the specific process about it. And the first one is the baseline. It means which student. And the second is results, where and when. And where are you headed and when will you get there? And that is the factors. It means why. Why do equity gaps exist? And the next is the contributor. It's about the people and who. Yes. And the next is the strategies and the what. It means what action, practices, structures, and even including the policies. And the next is a metric. It means how much or many or how well. How do you know you are making progress? And the last is the action. It means the how. how will you implement these strategies, and what actions will be taken effectively and individually to achieve the goals. And if you want to know more about it, you can search the link as follows. And last one is the outcome-based management framework used by the South Africa. So what is the outcome-based management framework? It is defined as orienting all action and the use of the resources towards achieving clearly defined and demonstrable results. So you can see from the picture from the top is the goal, until the bottom is the policy and the planning. And in the middle, you need to the student learning outcomes and the teacher learning practice, and also the learning resources, professional development, management, and also the assessment involved. Alright, at last let's compare the different tools in different countries in the goals-oriented methodology, coverage, data source, and advantages and limitation. And I want to emphasize the goals-oriented. And for the GPRA, it's guided by the specific performance target. And it emphasizes accountabilities for policy implementation results. And the RBA emphasizes the real impact of the policy outcomes on children and families. And the outcome-based management more focus on the alignment of the resource with the priorities, emphasizing long-term impact. Okay, that's all for my part.
Alright, thanks to my partners for showing the psychological theories and comparing the cross-national instruments. Now let's put the previous parts together and talk about the process and future development direction of educational policy evaluation. Science policies are greatly influenced by cultural, social, and economic backgrounds, so these factors decide the priorities, method choice, and implementation effects of policy evaluation in the future. Among all these, culture decides the value direction, goal setting, and the definition of successful education in the education system. So in cultures that care about collectivism, policy evaluation pays more attention to the results at the group level. But in cultures that stress individualism, the evaluation is more likely to focus on the improvement of individual academic achievements and employment abilities. Also, the cultural background affects the design of evaluation tools and the interpretation of data. For example, Western countries might be more into quantitative indicators, while some developing countries value community feedback and qualitative research more. When it comes to social factors, here like population structure, social mobility, and class differences, gender equality, and so on. This directly decides the priority goals and evaluation standards of education policies. Countries with an aging population might pay more attention to the effect of education policies on training the workforce. But countries with a large proportion of young people would focus more on the popularization rate and enrollment rate of education. Countries with obvious social stratification need to mainly evaluate the sports effects of education policies on disadvantaged groups. For example, is the impact of policies like education poverty, alleviation, and gender equalities policies. Economic factors are just and the level of economic development, the distribution of official budgets, and the needs of labor market directly affect the resources and the priorities for evaluating educational policies. Developed countries economically can put more resources into comprehensive evaluations, but developing countries might have problems like difficulties in the collecting data and not having enough evaluation abilities. In countries with more economic pressure, the evaluation of educational policies is more likely to stress the input and output ratio to make sure the limited resources are used in the best way. All in all, cultural, social, and economic factors don't exist on their own. They are mixed together and shape the feature of educational policy evaluation together. For example, in countries that have limited economic resources and are culturally diverse, policy evaluation might need to get qualitative feedback through the community involvement to make up for the lack of quantitative data. On the other hand, in economically developed social societies. A policy evaluation might have both global standards and local perspective, paying attention to international competitiveness and local needs. As globalization goes deeper, when evaluating educational policies, we will refer to international assessment standards more and more. But we have to make local adjustments based on the cultural and social backgrounds of each country. At the same time, using big data and artificial intelligence will make the evaluation more accurate and dynamic. For example, we can monitor the effect of policy implementation in real time through learning data and adjust strategies quickly. On the other hand, in the future, policy evaluations will care more about the participation of stakeholders, like teachers, students, and community representatives, to make sure the evaluation results are comprehensive and feasible. Finally, policy evaluation will combine perspectives from sociology, psychology, economics, and cultural studies to analyze the complex influence of educational policies completely.